So, welcome to Show Studio's live panel discussions where experts from all parts of the industry, inside and out actually, debate the show and the designs that we're seeing. And this is for 2020 menswear. We're kicking off with Pyer Moss. I have three esteemed guests, so really delighted to welcome fashion culture writer Bella Gladman, artist Rosa-Johan Uddoh, and freelance stylist and broadcaster Darkwah Kyei-Darkwah. Thank you very much, team, for coming. So, just really interested to get your opinions as we kind of pad out the area. You know, if fashion is really providing a narrative for what it is to be human, here we have, in the likes of art director Kerby Jean-Raymond, someone who is really having a vital conversation. It's not just about cut and silhouette, it's about so much more, and that's what makes him exciting, isn't it? Who wants to jump in with that?
Well, I just think what's really important about Kerby Jean-Raymond at the moment is that he is, along with Virgil Abloh, have just been appointed to the CFDA, that's the Council of Fashion Designers of America, like on their board, as like a few people have left. So we've got Cara Ross and Georgina Chapman, I know, have left. Diana von Furstenberg has like now left, and now it's Tom Ford as the sort of chairperson. And sort of Tom really wanted to bring in, I think, you know, a very new, fresh approach to sort of the Council of the Fashion Designers of America, and bringing Kerby Jean-Raymond just is a sort of, you know, testament to how important his work is to sort of American fashion and, you know, fashion at large. Absolutely.
Darkwah, what do you say?
I think it goes even further than bringing a new and fresh take to the CFDA. I think also it is a statement that what's happening in the world, the political climate, we need to be including people who are perpetuating the conversation, moving it forward, and really talking about inclusivity, and really involving all aspects of the community. And I think, especially in the case of Kerby Jean-Raymond, all of his work is so, I don't know, I think the easiest way to say it is that it resonates with me. Like, looking even at the first three looks from his collection, I'm seeing blackness through the ages, a kind of regal kind of nod to different tribes. And when I say tribes, it's not only tribes like culturally within Africa, but tribes like a disco movement, or like this, look in the middle, like the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s, like kind of Paris is Burning type scene. Just really talking about and showing that there's so many different ways to be Black and queer and still have it be fashionable and still have it be accessible, while still doing something meaningful for the community.
Absolutely. I feel like particularly like last season, Kerby Jean-Raymond has always partnered with different artists and sort of brought their work onto his clothes. And last season there was a really big emphasis on sort of showing sort of like, you know, Black families, Black men, women, children, just in a, you know, a state of like leisure and repose and just like a normal lifestyle. And, you know, he was quoted as saying it's about, you know, how radical would it be to just show, you know, Black normality. I think often within, you know, fashion, or that sometimes where the discussion has ended up going, you know, a lot of the narrative around race has been about like focusing on, you know, the colour, the trauma experienced by people of colour, and it's so refreshing to see something that's joyous and celebratory, and not just focusing on the, you know, on the terrible things that have happened. It's important to obviously, you know, report this and to show it, but, you know, people like Black people aren't limited to, you know, the historical pain that they've suffered.
I'm going to bring you in, Rosa, on that, because obviously identity is something that resonates with you as an artist. Tell us a little bit about how, when you read about the work of Kerby Jean-Raymond, how did that impact you?
Yeah, for me, like when I started to, when I was looking at the work, it's kind of perhaps exploring something slightly deeper than like initial representation about the campaigns to have like black models represented, that we've like started to hear like regularly and start to see like only just being put into fact. This is maybe more going on to describe like how do you live when you're black, and I think that is something that can only be captured when you bring, as you said, like all the different kind of tribes and ways of being black, and you start to explore them within one collection. So it just straight away it goes beyond just the tokenization like level where this is like one show in the whole of Fashion Week where there are all black models. So I'm really interested in that. That's something I'm interested in my own work, is like looking at the consequences of tokenization and then maybe trying to like move a little bit beyond that. So, yeah.
And this is actually, I mean, you know, Darkwah, you were holding back there, very elegant in the way that you were kind of phrasing what you were seeing. But, you know, this has been a long time coming, the othering of people of colour by European culture, a sense of entitlement, white supremacist eye that exists everywhere without there really being a deconstruction of that until now, which is hugely exciting, is it not? Do you feel a sense of release or...
In some ways, yes, and in a lot of other ways, it's conversations that have happened in the kitchen with my aunt or in the living room with my dad. So it kind of, while it's something that I'm happy that we're talking about, what then kind of happens because this is happening is I'm having to rehash all of these conversations and now having to further explain how I feel or how I felt about a certain thing. So I think it's great. I think in the case of Kerby Jean-Raymond and also having been included, having been appointed to CFDA as well, I think it's great because you now have kind of a community leader who can shape the conversation so that we're not doing the repeating of ourselves, so that we can actually definitely move forward and authentically do so, and authentically cast models in shows, or authentically put forward a collection that speaks to black people, no matter where they live or what their lifestyle is, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. Oh yeah, for me, like, I wonder, like, in order for that to happen, I feel like maybe this fashion has to, like, then, like, have this other life outside of the catwalk shows, because I wonder, and like, I don't know the answer to this, but I wonder what the audience was like at this show. And this is something as an artist, obviously, I make art about black feminism, but it's really, I make that art for black people, and but the fact is that the majority of audiences are white. So I think like this move that you see Kerby Jean-Raymond doing to bring in artists and to bring in music and these other references is like moving in that direction, which you need to if you're going to include black audiences, because they're like fields which black audiences are already engaging and dominating within. But I also feel like there needs to be something like the other way, you know? And I think you'll begin to see that with like his film work, like in the video, like 7 Mothers that he did earlier this year. That's kind of, what will these clothes and this messaging look like in like a normal environment, and how does that like bring up different conversations, and like how do these clothes kind of get dirty in a way, like what happens then?
I'm going to pick up on something that you said, Darkwah, about the emotional labour involved in the engagement with learning, you know, understanding what you don't know, but that there are also other energies, writers, artists who are, and I'm just thinking of The White Supremacy in Me book by Layla F. Saad, who has meant that actually there is that, do the work.
Yeah.
Don't come to us with your questions, having refused to sort of absorb what we're about. We're just saying, this is us and this is what we do, and that we've finally got a platform. And I think that's really important as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredibly important.
Fashion catches up now.
Yes, yeah, 100%. I think, again, when I'm thinking about this collection, so what, actually I'm going to ask you, when you look at these 3 looks, what is it that you are seeing?
I'm seeing the clothes first and foremost, and because my position has been to push back on lack of diversity in front of the lens, which doesn't happen until we have diversity behind the lens. I'm thrilled that I know the culture of the energy that has put these clothes down the runway. So I'm not someone who particularly looks at the intricacies of cut or the change in a hemline.
Yeah, but you see, this is I'm not even talking about that, because like when I look at this, I see me when I was 16 wanting to be really cool, like hacking into a bomber jacket and trying to make it shorter, because that was the kind of silhouette that Missy Elliott had in, was it Super Duper Fly, The Rain. I see in the middle dress my grandmother in her Sunday best, like taking us to church, you know, that kind of thing. And when I look at that and I feel that, it's fashion, like you said, when fashion has to catch up. Our pool of referencing currently is very white. My pool of referencing is white when it needs to be, and typically very black, and very black African, and then very black American. And I think what's happening now is that we are catching up slowly, and it has to be done in the right way, because there was this whole thing about, I think it was, digital blackface and all this stuff, like people using memes of only black people to convey emotion. And when you're looking at this as well, the way in which you reference it, if you are not a person of color, could be problematic, but ultimately we are moving towards a place where that pool of referencing, the Sunday best, the cool teenager, the high school dropout, the Run DMC type reference in the middle, or the oversized kind of hand-me-down jacket that looks like a school uniform, that kind of thing. Like that's a pool of referencing that before was looked at negatively, I feel, and now is not going to be looked at negatively, because we're actually standing up and telling our stories and demanding that they be listened to.
Thank you. I'm going to get Bella to sort of tell us a little bit about the artist that we're seeing here also. But I'm just going to come back to that, because really importantly, when you glamorize something and you iconize something, you begin to normalize those references, how it's seen. And that's part of his power, isn't it? Is that reframing what has been perceived and othered now as at the forefront of glamorous visual identity, which feels that it's actually reframing an aesthetic that fashion has it's formulated.
Completely reframing a narrative as well that has been so long dominated by non-POC people. I think my favorite example, because I'm also obsessed with this movie, is Us by Jordan Peele. And you look at that and you're watching a really good movie, and you're not thinking, God, there's a lot of black people in this, right? But there's a hell of a lot of black people in it. But it just is what it is. But when you think, okay, how many horror movies have you watched that see like maybe more than 5 black people in them in non-minstrel-like or, you know, caricature-type roles? You don't.
Or even alive.
Exactly, or even alive, because they usually end up dead in the first, 10 minutes? So we're not doing it because we want to do something that's only black. We're not creating collections like this because we want to do something that's only this. It's because it's just like we're people and we exist, and this is our existence. And for so long, our existence, while it's been acknowledged, I don't think necessarily has been respected.
More celebrated.
Yeah, and we're standing up and doing that for ourselves now.
Exciting to look at the images that we are seeing coming through. I know that...
let's talk about this artist. So, Kerby Jean-Raymond is like very much, I feel like whenever he's making collections, whenever within Pyer Moss he's sort of, putting something out there, he's making sure to bring as many people that he's connected with like up with him. And so this time he's collaborated with an artist called Richard Phillips, who was jailed for 45 years for a crime he didn't commit. Some evidence was like fabricated to sort of, incriminate him. And so when I read an interview that when Jean-Raymond heard about his story, he was like, I really need to reach out and, give Richard Phillips that sort of chance to, to have that platform, to have that sort of kind of stage from where to show his creativity and not have his sort of narrative turn into.
And we're seeing the artist now. Are we on the screen, guys? Is that what we put up? Yeah.
Yeah, to not have the his narrative only be wrongful imprisonment. That actually there's so much more to him, and like actually what you said about that sort of a black visual culture perhaps has been considered or like excluded from the fashion narrative. Looking at the collaboration this time with Sean John, P Diddy's designer label, and previously with Fubu and Cross Colours in previous seasons, you can see Kerby Jean-Raymond really just trying to show and pay testament to that the incredible visual culture that has been so popular. I'm thinking about Sean John, maybe $525 million profit in its like peak at like in 2002. Fubu was like $350 million in 1998. These brands were so big, so popular, so commercially like viable, massive heavyweights, but then still, excluded from that sort of fashion canon. Sean John probably maybe being a bit of an exception because of, his, alter ego as P Diddy and having that kind of celebrity cachet as well. But it's showing these brands that, were what people wore, were like, if you walked around New York or, London or wherever in the 90s, people would be wearing this, like this was the visual culture that you saw, and it was completely excluded. So it's sort of, like you said, kind of bringing that history kind of back into the mainframe of the visuals.
I do, like, just picking up what you're saying though, like I do really wonder, like when we hear all these like things about like how much money like Sean John like made and stuff, like what is the value of bringing black everyday life, which is often like about like a performance of survival, and like bringing that aesthetic into what we're actually talking about is into like a very middle class elite sphere. Like we're not really talking about, we're bringing this into like like something onto like, this isn't something that everyone can have, what we're seeing here. So I wonder, like, what does it mean to elevate actually? Is that a good thing?
Yeah, it's like, is it sort of appropriative to be like, to take a sort of, a normal household and propel that to this, we can, for a white audience to play at that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think it's appropriative because I have no doubt that, like, this is his culture and this is his reference. Like, I mean, what else can you do other than make art about your own experience? But
See, I think the question that you've raised is very valid. However, what I feel very strongly, especially in terms of this collection, is that when you elevate and take that up there, everyone who is from said community that you're elevating has something to aspire to fight for. They feel that they have a reason to speak and have a reason to tell their story because someone has said, hey, I see you. It's very easy to be like, okay, fine. What is it that we're doing? Is it giving back? Where is it giving back? But just the sheer fact that the collection exists in the way it exists, in the way that it's presented, gives back to the community in confidence, in a way in which people can express themselves without feeling that they have to like tiptoe around their wording so as not to offend. It's unapologetic. In every collection, I think that Pyer Moss has put out has been unapologetic, and it's giving that whole community who will probably look at stuff and be like, oh my God, my grandma made something like this, like way back when. It's giving them a reason to not apologize for their existence, to not apologize for where they are, and to not apologize for their aspirations and where they want to go. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about it.
I was going to say, like, I think Pyer Moss always is so rich in references, and it's those things that you look at and you're like, oh, I think I see this, I think I see that, but I can only know my references as like a sort of like white and Asian woman. Like I am not going to pick up on everything, and so for the people that do, who who are from New York, who are from the Black community, they are going to. It's going to resonate even more with those people, and and realistically, like Pyer Moss's designs, they're not for me. They're not. They're for his community, and just it's. I just wanted to say like how I wasn't at the show. Obviously, I'm in London, but I've been looking at so many videos online, and it's just amazing. I mean, it's like in the King's Theatre in Brooklyn. It's like a beautiful 1920s, like old vaudeville theatre. To have that presence, that stage, to have this amazing choir, and they're singing like both like sort of gospel stuff, but then also there's Missy Elliott, there's like Cardi B, bringing all of those like really, it's like so fun and so it's so culturally rich. It's it's like going through and being like, oh, I think I get that. It's a really fun game to play.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the only things that I've seen that is like this like rich in reference like recently, I guess, is something like Arthur Jaffa's videos, like Love is the Message is Death. It's a real like collage of Black culture, which, let's face it, like especially in the US, is inextricably linked with capitalism. So I say that like I'm wary about like the use of protest slogans. I'm wary of like the elevating of what is like Black normality to like a high fashion level that Black people themselves perhaps can't afford. But the like question in itself, like how can you celebrate Blackness within capitalism, is one that is really relevant to American Black culture, and I'm like excited to see like where he goes with it.
Yeah.
Could we bring it back though to an observation that you made, is that it's the drip, drip, drip of being visible in the first place, of seeing a range of things to aspire to. We're talking about one designer here, but there should be 10, 20 within the schedule who are showing different versions of Black culture, being able to focus on different things, different aspects. So we're still looking with excitement at one or two names who have been given a seat at the table. We have got a long way to go to a certain extent, but that psychological change where you spoke of seeing yourself, how powerful that is to herald in the next generation of creatives. Do you feel that has a...
Yeah, definitely. I think I'd like to just go back and say I do not think that Kerby Jean-Raymond was given a seat at the table. I think he demanded one and he got it.
Thank you.
I think his work in not wanting to create collections just because he's creating collections and not adhering to seasonal structures, in wanting it to be about the art and about the culture, got him that recognition, and he created his seat. And in creating a seat, he's building a table for a whole load of other people to come through. And I find, especially in the UK, because when I was working for publication, I was looking for queer POC designers to feature in this, that, and the other. And one thing that I realized is there are loads of them that exist, but loads of them are working so hard to get to the level of Kerby Jean-Raymond that they are like hidden away at other brands and not necessarily focusing on their own thing right away, because it's that whole like work hard, save, create, and put it out. And I think here, in everything that Kerby Jean-Raymond has said and that he stands for and that his collections stand for, it actually says you don't need to go and like sit in like Louis Vuitton for God knows how many years, and you don't need to go to, I don't know, Dior and go and do all of this. Just actually focus on your craft and push it with the community, make sure it's authentic and for the community, and it will be seen and you will be heard and you will get there.
Like you give yourself your own legitimacy. You don't need to get the co-sign from those old houses.
Exactly.
Like, you give it yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like such an inspiring thing, I think, to be able to make is like really to build like your own self-esteem, like because so much is like, is like, especially as a black person, you're told that you can't do. That's so much of the messaging, and to like be able to like sew your own pair of trousers. I mean, like,
definitely.
It's really building,
And there is actually a very real deficit of people of colour moving to study fashion, to feel that they have the freedom to move around in fashion, because it is essentially that European aesthetic. So, as you quite rightly said, you know, this is about creating something. It's not about going to the same place and observing those formats. So it's in a way the beginning, as all art, in the way that it can challenge what's there before, is now facilitating, isn't it, in the minds of the next generation of creatives.
Yeah.
These are clothes to be confident in as well.
Yes.
You know, it's not just the presence of Kerby Jean-Raymond, you know, in the Fashion Week calendar. It's like, you know, he's actually creating clothes to be confident in. It's about, you know, we've got these beautiful dual tone satins. You know, we've got like big shoulders. We've got, you know, it's impact making fashion. And there's a, you know, like I can't remember who said it actually, but someone was talking about the regal kind of nature of it. You know, that it's fluid. It's, you know, there's a sort of kind of like royal sort of aspect to it. Yeah. It's powerful. You know, and you know, you've got like the James Brown kind of like suiting vibes going on. You've got like Sister Rosetta Tharpe kind of like in the, you know, like on the prints. You've got the keyboards. You've got like the guitars on the lapels, and it's like, you know, really harking back to, I think, that kind of idea of like, you know, someone on stage as the like master of their domain.
Yeah.
Like this is a confident thing, and that's what he does really well.
When you said that about being master on stage, a couple of days ago I was talking to a friend and I quoted Nasir Jones from a song that he released, I can't remember when, but it was called I Can. And he says, we were kings and queens, never porch monkeys. And I think what this is, it's a love song to black culture and black people. The jewel tones, the sharp shoulders down to the oversized flowy jackets with a drop shoulder. It is saying we are kings and queens and we should rise up and forget I mean, not to slate them, but like forget the H&Ms and Zaras of the world. Get up and be fab and do it the way you want to do it and not the way that you think you should because.
Yeah, and I think like this dress in the middle at the moment, like for the like it's just like you know, like Toni Morrison says, like the main function of racism is distraction, and like this is like, you know, this is moving away from like the slogans about like stop killing us. This is what I would be doing, you know, if I wasn't.
This is I am beautiful and I know I'm beautiful. I don't need you to tell me I'm beautiful.
Exactly.
Just look at me.
You know, and like sort of added to that, it's like it's got that kind of Diana Ross mahogany kind of like vibe to it. You know, with the satin, there's definitely a Diana Ross kind of like thing of her in this kind of orange peach silk, and you're just like, yes, more Diana Ross.
Rosa, I know you've got to go because you have to catch a plane. But is there a kind of final comment from you about the inspiration, perhaps for you as an artist, in what you see other creatives doing?
I just think that this is like an amazing like interdisciplinary look at black performance, and I think that's how you have to look at like black life as performance across all these fields, across music, across fashion, across like drama and theatre, and I feel like that's exactly like the investigation, the research that that we're seeing in this like Pyer Moss collection.
Thank you. Bon voyage.
Thank you.
We're going to carry on talking because obviously we're not going to be racing off to an airport. But you know, the space that feels for me is one of huge excitement. Is how does Kerby Jean-Raymond go forward in what we know is a very cutthroat environment business-wise. He's done some very clever deals, hasn't he? He now has Reebook as a big a kind of supporter, and that's always been the way for designers, is that they actually are aligned with a larger company in order to keep the flow going. What do you feel about that, Darkwah? It's a tough old world to survive. People want novelty and they want...
Exactly.
He's still in that world.
Yeah, I think... I don't know how I feel about it, if I'm perfectly honest. I feel like, on the one hand, you have to do what you have to do, because I would hate for him to not have a deal with a company that then sees me missing a collection that makes me feel seen. On the other hand, I think when you are working with said company, you have to still maintain an air of what it is that you do, or what it is that you stand for. And I think Kerby Jean-Raymond would be able to do that quite well. I think also some of the pieces in this collection, obviously he's said that he wants his collections to be taken on as a whole, as opposed to just little edits. But I do think that some of the pieces that have been created, some of the tracksuit looks, some of the dress looks, jackets, scarves, and so on, the accessories, I think will also definitely push it. I don't know how he's going to navigate it, if I'm perfectly honest. But I am very hopeful because he's doing some amazing stuff.
Sustainability's been important, hasn't it? That's a conversation that he's wanted to have.
Well, actually, just following on about the sort of Reebok thing, is that actually, because there was sort of a discussion on Twitter maybe last year about sort of someone saying, oh, you're selling these T-shirts for really, you're selling these T-shirts for a lot of money and they're not affordable. And maybe actually with the Reebok collaboration, the Pyer Moss can message can be more accessible to people with a sort of a lower budget.
We're looking at that particular T-shirt now. So stop calling 911 on the culture. His slogan's very powerful. But people who wanted to wear that T-shirt saying that they were priced out. Yeah,
and so perhaps I think this was the what sometimes people often say about sort of collaborating with a sort of more high street or a lower price point brand. It means that they can get their designs out to a different kind of audience. Obviously within a a sort of a fashion week space. We're talking much higher budgets that aren't accessible to all. And Reebok being a kind of a streetwear brand, it's much more easily accessible, which could be a beneficial thing, particularly with the kind of message that Pyer Moss is, really putting forward. I do obviously think, what you said about having to work with sort of a bigger brand, potentially there's always the worry it would dilute the message, but I really think that Kerby Jean-Raymond will always, he seems like he's got his, he's really firm to his principles always.
This is true.
I'm not really sure about sustainability in terms of...
well, he's certainly spoken up, in defence of that price. As we know, when you are an emerging business, you don't have high volume turnover. And in many ways, in this environment and this day and age, would you want to? Because, sort of farming it out, making it bigger, making it uncontrollable, that's our criticism of big brands out there in some ways. And he said... to a certain extent, that we have all become kind of price ignorant of what it really costs to make a garment, and that he knows the people who sew his clothes, he's in touch with them, he wants to pay them well, and he's not shifting volume in that way, and so therefore that's how much it costs.
And I really wish Rosa was still here, because what she was saying about blackness within capitalism, I feel like actually there's a lot of the things that Kerby Jean-Raymond was saying when he was negotiating this sort of a critique of his prices. I feel like there's a lot of talk about rewarding the creators that he works with, and making sure or like compensating them adequately for the, you know, the time and the energy and their creativity, and not, you know, particularly when you get to really cheap price points, you know, it's exploiting, you know, marginalized bodies, and, you know, exploiting the environment, which I think there is a level of respect and gravitas given to something that's as a higher price point. I realise that in saying that there's not affordable, and you know I can't always afford these things unless I save and save and save. But there is something about the gravitas that a more elevated price point gives to something that makes something valuable. And obviously, Kerby Jean-Raymond operates within this space of sort of the gravitas of high fashion. So I don't want everything to be cheap for him, because I don't want him to lose his cachet, if that makes sense.
Well, the Vivienne Westwood, you know, paying more but buying less is an ideal way potentially for us to be recognising that this is a special garment that we hold onto. It's not fast turnover. It would be good to actually look at some of the garments before we bring it to an end, because I think I'm getting the signal of start to wrap it up. But just holding across there's huge variety there, isn't there, of styles and references, and yet from all the images that have gone up, one of the things that I've enjoyed seeing is just that loose, and I think that the designer himself sort of termed things as spiritual sportswear, as opposed to conforming to that Western silhouette, very strict tailoring, not to say that it's not in there, but do you get a sense of an overall aesthetic as a stylist? Do you look at the clothes and think, I know how I'd like to work with those, I know how I'd like to?
I mean, I think having looked at the different looks within the collection, there is a sense of like reverence. I think with getting a sense of how I would like to work with them, I think that the way that they've been styled, this is going to sound so terrible as a stylist, but the way that they've been styled is actually perfect, and that's exactly how I would do it. There are pieces that I would wear, definitely. I love that oversized jacket. And I just, there's a sense of really respecting everything that's going down the runway, every garment that's been made. You know, it's tracksuits, and tracksuits are typically looked down upon, and it's not cool, or it's not like chic or whatever, but it's very, it just feels like, I don't know, it feels like home. It's a weird thing to say, but it feels like home when you look at, there was there was a suit, I think it was on a model with like an afro, and it's like kind of like glittery. And
just seeing if we can find it.
But yeah, it feels so beautiful and fun and joyous and fresh and just, there.
Yeah.
It's like to even start with that, for me, it's just like, okay, right, like you're here, you're witnessing something that's so unapologetically Black, and that respects everything that we've done, and is going to respect it in a way that it hasn't been respected when it's been depicted by non-POC people. When you look at those, that silhouette, you think like, minstrel disco queen on some kind of like Soul Train, not Soul Train actually, because Soul Train was for us by us, but on a show, and she has a specific accent and a specific way of being, and she's maybe not the sharpest tool in the box. When you look at that, and you look at the way that Black women have been portrayed in TV shows, is like the kind of like, no, I ain't gonna do it, that kind of like minstrel type attitude. But this comes out as your first look, and you're like, damn, because there's something really beautiful about it. It looks like it's almost like referencing, like, is it Mondrian? Yeah. So it's artful.
That's what I got anyway. I mean,
yeah,
I
exactly.
say yes, like I know. I don't know.
It's like, let's take something that's artful, that people hugely respect. Let's smack a disco attitude on it, I guess, to speak in like the simplest of terms, and then send it down the runway and say, we see you and you are art, because that's what that says to me. You're wearing art because you are the art.
Yeah, nice ending.
Thanks.
That's great.
You know, and if we can want something for a label as it goes forward, are there certain, let's just say you get the call, come in, work with me, where do you see us going? What would you bring to it?
What would I bring to it? I think I'd bring more Africanness to it. There is such a disconnection with African Americans and Africa in general. They don't really know where they are from a lot of the time. And I would take the pool of referencing and like, you know, the decades that we're seeing and take them from the States and take them to Africa, take them to Accra, take them to Djibouti, and actually bring in the textiles and the fabrics and work with artisans in those areas as well to create something that truly does bring the community together in the diaspora. Because what you have is people who are living in the States who have no idea really where they're from, and no idea of really what Africa's like, and no idea really of what African textiles are like, what fabric are like, or what artisans can do. And you are connecting them in some way to their roots by bringing to the fashion sphere the work from that land, I guess.
Yeah. Can we hope, Bella, that press generally and press interest broadcasts the talent, the creativity, the energy that we have here? Because, you know, as a kind of fashion culture, it still lives in a bubble, doesn't it? To being able for this to be conveyed to a broader audience, maybe through music collaborations, ultimately through things like the Reebook collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about, you know, how much I've seen sort of like Pyer Moss kind of worn outside of like the fashion space. So, you know, I think it's like Jenny Aiko wore a kind of like purple Pyer Moss kind of outfit on a red carpet. I can't remember where to, but a music thing. And just sort of thinking perhaps it's actually doing that, dressing, you know, music stars and stuff, which is where so much of the interesting fashion can be sort of disseminated and spread outside of just the real insular fashion world. So it would be great to see, you know, some more, some more kind of entertainment celebrities wearing this. You know, maybe that seems like a real, you know, I really see people wearing it and showing themselves outside of a fashion space is like a real strong point for a designer when it translates and morphs into that kind of musical space. I think, to be honest, in terms of the, you know, the designs, they're easy, they're wearable. You know, there are some that are a little bit more challenging, but you know, there's definitely a Pyer Moss kind of. There's a few signatures coming out. There's like a pleated, asymmetric, like skirt or dress hemline. I really like. I think Pyer Moss is really strong in sort of like trousers rather than dresses and skirts. He does do them, but the trousers and that fluidity really kind of lends itself to. You know, I think that's where he's really strong in, and I think that's only going to become more and more visible as that kind of disseminates through the, you know, Instagram and you know, actually how people are actually wearing it rather than just on a runway.
Yeah, I think just to add to that also, I think what I would hope is that when stylists are going out and shooting stuff, one, they try not to pull all of the same stuff, but more so that they respect the clothes and and where it's coming from. Because, you know, you get a stylist, and I mean, I've done it myself, and you're like, okay, cool, we need this look. We need this look and for this image, and then it goes into the publication, and it's just an image on a page, and it doesn't really say anything anymore. And it doesn't say anything anymore because we're trying to sell all the time, as opposed to create a narrative and create a story and really like bring people in. And I think that's what's generally missing from the fashion industry, in my opinion, is that we are no longer we're no longer creating fantasies that people can fall into and therefore will buy the clothes and support the designer. We're just putting out standard commercialized imagery, and I would love to see these clothes used in a way that tells a story within a story that then makes people fall in love with it and look for it. Because when you look at like your standard editorial image of like your model kind of stoic staring off into the distance, you don't connect with it. And when you don't connect with it, you don't connect with any of the pieces. You're not looking for that jacket or that cape that has like a red guitar detail on it, or those trousers that look like they could have been raw silk with like a silk organza or something over it. You know, you're not looking for it. Like, we need to be made to look.
Yeah, and that it's maybe taking those, you know, those performers, like, you know, I'd really like Kalela to be wearing some of these, or maybe Kelsey Liu as well. I think she'd do really well in these kind of more like stronger things. Basically having someone who has the presence as well, who is going to bring these things to life, rather than sort of putting it on someone who's really taking the role as more of a clothes horse.
Yeah.
Like, these are clothes to be worn by somebody, not, you know, like they're, you know, you need a personality within them, and maybe a performer would bring those out in a way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but you know, actually that's the next stage of outreach, isn't it? It's like the people in the front row are now fully on board for the energy and the talent, but disseminating it to the people who then take those messages further. And front row conversations is vital. And as you say, not just as a format for an advertising kind of tit for tat because they've advertised, so now they want to see their stuff featured, but actually someone who can make inspirational fantasy images. So Darkwah, I look forward to seeing your next shoot. What can I say?
Yeah, I'll get in touch with their PR and just pull some stuff for sure.
But thank you very much to both of you, Darkwah, to Bella, and also we thank Rosie in her absence. That was fascinating. I learned a lot. Thank you. So I am going to bring that to a close. I'm going to thank you all for watching, of course. And if you want to see more coverage, please go to showstudio.com. And if you're watching Show Studio via YouTube, then be sure to like and comment, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.